Slept on Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution.
This was obviously not new territory for the slasher genre, but Silent Night, Deadly Night brought the idea to new levels of sleaziness.
It had its moment and then vanished, like all garbage does.
If bad taste was visible, this movie would be visible from space.
What's next? The Easter Bunny as a child molester?
Not only is the movie vile and callous, but it's also pretty darn stupid.
The perfect stocking stuffer for misanthropic Scrooges.
The film features something to infuriate and offend almost everyone.
You people have nothing to be proud of, even if you made a few bucks off of all the negative publicity. Your profits truly are blood money.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept on Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer.
I'm GrobeStreet.
This week we are continuing our holiday theme with the 1984 Christmas slasher classic, Silent Night, Deadly Night.
I am so glad your wife pointed out that this movie qualified.
If she hadn't looked it up, I never would have, because never in a million years would I have thought this qualified for our podcast, because the movie's just so damn good.
This is like hearing Friday the 13th qualifies. Like, this is such an original slasher movie that is just so well known. I just can't believe that we get to do it on our podcast.
Shocking, really. Shocking. As always, we structured this pod so that the first half is spoiler free. We talk about some things to look for in the film, take a break, go watch the movie, come back, talk about what we just went through. All films have to be below 50 on Rotten Tomatoes for both critics and audience score.
And let's get to the rotten premise here, which it's a short one, so pay attention. An orphan raised by nuns grows up to be a killer toy store Santa Claus. Critics, 44%. Audience, 39%. It's a one-sentence summary of the movie, and I think that's all it needs.
That is actually pretty good, yeah.
They left out a few parts that we'll get to for sure.
Usually they're horrible, and that one, that's fine.
It's fine, yep. The score is not so much, but...
score makes no sense.
This is the movie that, we watch it as a, enjoyable movie. We have our wives on the podcast. They enjoyed it. It's a good movie. A lot of people watch it as so bad it's good type of movie. So there's just two ways to do it. So I really am confused by such a low audience score, because I don't know how you go through this movie and don't have a good time by the time you get to the end. Like, it's such an enjoyable Christmas horror movie.
It makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. We got a little bit of background. It's an interesting story how the film came out. It opened November 9th, 1984. Opened number 8. I feel like a lot of the films we do open up a little closer to the top. But interestingly, it beat out Nightmare on Elm Street, which also came out that same weekend. It came in at number 10. Kind of shocking. It made, in that opening weekend, it made $1.2 million. It ended up making $2.5 million on just a budget of $750,000. So again, this one made money. But what was interesting is this was only in theaters for 6 or 7 days. And the background, so I guess taking a step back, the concept originally came from a short story that a Harvard student had written. And then one of the producers said, "This is great. We'll have somebody write a screenplay off of this." Screenplay comes together. It's great. Also, they shoot it in Utah using mostly local actors. Low budget. It doesn't feel super low budget. It feels pretty legit, but they did it on shoestring.
I just wanted to stop for a second and just say the awesome name of that Harvard student's short story. Do you have it?
I do, but let's hear it.
He Sees You When You're Sleeping.
It's brilliant.
So brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Let's not have a script made after. It's so good.
It's brilliant. And then there was also the working title afterwards for a while of Sleigh Ride.
Awesome.
So they're making this movie and they're putting it all together, and they're sort of thinking, all right, there's maybe some tough themes here for the 80s. They're a little, cautious about how they're going to be perceived. And then I think the backlash was just way, way more than they were expecting. And I think part of it was they had been advertising this in sort of like primetime TV. between sort of family friendly type TV shows, and some of the TV spots, parents were just very concerned that this was going to somehow ruin their children's view of Santa and Christmas. And they were just incredibly concerned about that. They end up pulling all the ads the week before the movie's going to come out. And the movie's then out, and they have all sorts of protests, which is ridiculous. They have protests at malls, at movie theaters where parents are out there protesting the movie. The big theme for the protest, people would go and sing Christmas carols outside these movie theaters in protest. And for whatever reason, the production company and the distributor just said, we can't handle the heat. And they pulled the movie after less than a week, which is crazy. I mean, this is a magnificent piece of art, and it just gets pulled because of some parents freaking out that their kids are going to be scared of Santa.
Yeah, I think that what I read was, I think like TriStar, one of the distributors, was also owned by like Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola didn't want to deal with any of the flack from that because they're a family-owned. I mean, they're a family-centered business. I do have a quote from one of these parents, which is awesome. Because I think it came. They were airing spots like between Little House on the Prairie, and all of a sudden this would come on, and all the parents there with their kids would see this commercial. But it scared the hell out of my kids. This commercial has ruined Christmas for my children. How do you not go see that movie? If a commercial ruins Christmas for my son, I'm going to go see the movie.
Yes, 100%. That's all. I feel like I didn't know that background before digging into this for the podcast, but it's kind of crazy, especially when you think in this day and age in terms of marketing and the type of movies that are popular. Definitely a different era when this came out. But
I also read that the places they wanted to screen it were sort of like Middle America, where it's heavily Protestant and not Catholic, because they were afraid of the Catholics' reaction once it reached the coasts. So they kept it inland for a week because they were trying to plan on how it would go. They wanted to get bigger enough before they brought it to the coast, so it had some weight behind it before all the Catholics saw it. But it never made it.
Nope.
Great background as always. Do you want to get to Bolo's?
Let's do it.
I'll go first here. Bolo holding a baby in the front seat of a moving car.
That's a great one. I'm going to piggyback right onto that because right around the same time, it's instant. But Bolo and Ugly Baby.
So ugly.
This is the weirdest looking kid.
Oh, man, I'm glad. It didn't seem like he was sick. Bolo, long close-ups of signs.
There's some of these things in this film. There's things that are just very obvious.
Yes.
I'm going to say Bolo, a keyhole.
Bolo, nipple.
I'll go right back on that. Bolo, a hairy butt.
Oh, I had hairy man butt as well. Good one.
Shockingly hairy butt.
So hairy, unnecessary. Bolo, an awesome 80s recliner.
Yes, absolutely. I will say Bolo, mistletoe. This is our second back-to-back Bolo movie with mistletoe.
Yeah, I think it's a requirement for a Christmas horror movie. Bolo, it's been a couple episodes, but I'm glad to bring it back. Bolo, a nut shot.
And I'll go with Bolo, a belt.
Oh, you don't want to see that. Bolo, a box cutter as a gift.
Yep, she didn't really know what to make of that. I'm going to say Bolo, an axe. And it's one of those scenes where you see it and you know what's going to go down.
Mm-hmm. Great one. Bolo, a busy signal. You can't call this person because the phone is being used.
I will say Bolo, a futuristic-looking smock.
Wow. Great one. Bolo, police barging into homes with guns drawn.
Let's say Bolo, waking a nun.
Oh. Bolo, a mullet.
And Bolo, an approving nod.
Yes, good one. Bolo, a sex pun.
This is very on trend for the era, but bolo wood paneling.
This is my last one. Bolo melting snow.
That's a good one. That ties back to, I guess they were filming in April in Utah.
In Utah,
and
yeah.
they had to film all the scenes before the snow melted, so they did all the exteriors first. But you can see it doesn't always look like the beginning of winter. It very much looks like things are about to turn.
It's so good because I saw this movie first, obviously, without reading anything about it. But then you see what you just said. Like after reading what you just said, I read the same thing too. How they're running out of snow, and they filmed all the scenes with snow outdoors, like first before all the snow melted. But you can literally see all the snow melting in all of their outdoor shots, where they're just like scrambling for any place that, and they even even fuzz out the background where there's just a little patch of snow, and then you can't see the background because there's no snow over there.
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right, we're going to get to watching the movie, so let's go with our last one here. What drink to pair with the movie?
So I'm going with something very, very simple here. I know it's our second Christmas-themed movie in a row. And last time I went with the mulled wine. Here, kind of going the other direction. I'm just saying, grab a bottle of scotch and just rip it from the bottle.
Wow.
You know, it's this is that kind of movie. You could share the bottle with your friends. Doesn't have to be something super fancy. Doesn't have to be bottom shelf. Just get something you like and do it.
I feel like you're reading off of my notes here. Zoom, but I have a bottle of scotch and a significant other or friend that you're fine sharing the bottle with, just to rip, like I have it in quotes here, just to rip from the bottle while you have it. But I do it sometimes, but especially take a sip, one of you, every time the word naughty is said. So when naughty is said,
oh yeah,
you take a rip from the bottle.
Yeah, you could have one person doing naughty and one person doing punished.
Oh, that'd be great. And then I also said with some homemade chocolate cookies. Make it a little while you rip shots of scotch from the bottle.
Well, that's clearly the obvious drink of choice. So go grab your favorite bottle and sit back and enjoy.
Enjoy, and a little treat when we get back. We'll have our wives on the podcast for the draft.
Enjoy.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. You've made it through Halloween. Now try and survive Christmas. Silent night. Deadly night.
Slept on Cinema is brought to you by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know anyone who's struggling with shoe tying, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Or if you know anyone who just doesn't like tying their shoes, Training Ties keeps shoes tied all day long. Say no to Velcro and yes to independence with Training Ties.
Welcome back. That was amazing.
That was something. Certainly amazing. Very rewatchable.
Every single time I see that movie, it's better than I remembered it being, even if I just saw it.
Yep, that just happened here too. I think we'll go over it, but the time of the movie is very good. 85 minutes. Perfect.
That's perfect. I was trying to think of things that I could find in terms of flaws, and I think this is pretty close to a perfect film.
I agree. I mean, I had real trouble for one of our later segments, the one change to be a blockbuster, to find anything to change because I don't want anything to change.
Pristine.
We have a special treat for this holiday episode. We have our wives here. So the Bug and Nikki are here. And you guys, from what you didn't play yet, but I heard you had you bought the Kickstarter game.
That's right. We bought the board game. It has two different sides. There's a drinking game version and a non-alcoholic version. And that was kind of what prompted us to watch the movie and have this be our episode here. So that arrived a few weeks ago, and then here we are. So
it was almost an accident that this ended up on the pod because I was just looking up the movie on Rotten Tomatoes and saw the score, and we couldn't believe that it was below 50 for both categories.
If you hadn't looked it up, it never would have crossed my mind that this would be eligible for the pod. Just because
it really doesn't make any sense that is, because it spawned 5 sequels, and it's a movie that's heavily referenced and ripped off all the time. So you would think that it would have better ratings either by critics or the audience. But good for us that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I heard, Bug, you want the first pick in our draft. Is that true?
Oh, I'll absolutely take it. I think I'm going to have to take with my first pick, just because I'm positive it's going to get taken in the first round. I'm going to take the sledding scene.
Oh,
Phenomenal.
That was just, like you said, phenomenal. The whole coming down, the darkness, and then all of a sudden the sled appearing, just everything about that.
And then the head rolling down.
After. It was
so
just,
good.
and the look on the friend's face, kind of like, hey buddy, like all excited to see his friend, and then suddenly realizing, watching that transformation. A+, favorite scene.
Yeah, also a great setup to that scene. Virgin Hill, which clearly it did not look like. Clearly it looked like a lot of hill. Also, the joke by the friend. What was it? It was
like
the only
Virgin Hill, the only kind you'll ever get.
Yeah, so telling his friend that he's only getting virgins, I guess, is that sort of a dig that he was going?
We had the exact same conversation. I was so confused. I was like, Stan, explain this to me. And
my take was that the guy was just like never going to get laid, and that was what he was saying. He was just like you're never going to get with anybody, but it wasn't obvious.
Right. It seemed like an easy, just like you.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
That's absolutely a great choice, and there's so much of that scene too, because you get the awesome 80s bully type too, which is just awful.
Yeah, the slightly older kids taking over the sled to do this childish activity. The whole thing just,
and there's a lot of joy on their face.
It was ominous in so many different ways.
And it's also one of those things that you kind of root, like you're not that upset when these bullies get murdered because they just stole these kids' sleds. So you're like, yeah, screw these guys.
Yeah, and it's a great 80s thing where the little nerdy, the younger kids say something back to the bully, and then the whole "I'll twist your arm until you take it back" thing, which was a thing for some reason, the take back.
Yep. But yeah, it was very considerate of the filmmakers to sort of allow us to enjoy those murders by having them be such dicks.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like the asshole coworker or whatever. It's like he's a bully too, and it's like you just feel like these certain kind of guys like always have it coming to them.
He was certainly naughty. Great pick. What do you got for your first pick?
I feel like this is a stupid thing to choose.
Perfect.
I don't know. I loved all I don't know if this is a thing, but it's just like it's not Me Too era stuff, but it's that kind of thing. It's like how much life has changed. It's like I loved seeing the wife in the front seat with the baby with no seatbelt and the baby on the lap, and I loved that kind of thing, like the insensitive bosses, like
no one caring about his trauma at all.
Yeah, like the boss being like, "Oh, you think about your parents on Christmas," and it's like he came to you from an orphanage. Like all of those, just like people that about you back then is like a thing. It's like no one cares about anything about your stuff, or like safety or otherwise, just do whatever you want is like the life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people were just more durable back then?
Yeah, you were supposed to, and you were just more aware. Like, it wasn't anyone else's fault if you have your baby in the front seat and you go flying through the windshield. That's on you.
Right.
It's not like you're looking for a change or anything of more safety protocols. You just messed up.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
All right, Stan, I think you're up.
All right, I'm glad this lasted. I'm just going with Punish.
Yeah. Yep.
So good. Every time he says
great.
it, it's amazing. It's just, I think it's one of the greatest phrases in cinema history.
It's hard not to just say it around the house now.
Yes. Completely.
There's been a lot of that around here this week.
Today in my head, I forgot to clean up a little rice that spilled and Nikki went there. In my head, I was just like, punish. I deserved punishment for forgetting to pick something up.
Yeah, it's so simple. It's clean. It's perfect. It's just it's brilliant.
It's very binary. This movie there's either naughty or nice. There's nothing in between. There's no gray area. And when you're naughty, you punish. Exactly.
Great pick.
Yeah, he sees red when he after that punish line is said for sure. I am going to pick this one, which is an easy first pick for me. I'm glad it lasted. It may be relatable because Nikki saw some of mine when that my mom brought over a little while ago. But I'm going to go with Billy's Drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Billy's Drawing on Christmas with all of like the arrows and stuff through Santa. And it's just a dead Santa and just a massacre around the Christmas tree. I love that the girl was just like appalled in the class. She just pointed and was like, no, Billy. And then he had to go to Mother Superior for another great interaction with Mother Superior, which she's screaming at him why he would do this. Once again, going back to Nikki's point, no one taking into account that his family was massacred by a Santa 3 years ago.
Yeah, right in front of him.
Trying time.
Right. And I love that scene, too, how you don't see the drawing. You sort of see everyone's reaction to it ahead of time, and then there's this big reveal.
Yeah, exactly.
We all have young children, and I'm kind of terrified to get to the date where my child draws something horrifically creepy, because that's just that goes every movie I've ever seen where someone does that. Like, that's the first sign of something horrible is about to happen.
Yeah, that's our son right now saying he's going to do that as soon as possible.
So in the not too distant future, you're going to have to deal with this exact scenario.
And then you have to have the talk with your wife, like, how creepy is this? Is this go to a doctor creepy, or
right.
we just ride this out? Well, my mother saved a drawing of mine from like second grade, and it was me closing the windowsill on my sister. Like, it's not a nice drawing, but to her, it was just like, yeah, you drew a house.
I remember drawing one when I was a child. It was a piano, and my parents were like, wow, this is like a great piano. And then I was like, no, hold it up to the light. And I had drawn these bombs on the other side of the paper. So when you held up to the light, you could see that certain keys, when you pressed them, also would cause the piano to explode.
I mean, I would hope your parents would be proud of that one. That's pretty good.
I think it's like proud and terrified.
Right. Well, he could be an evil villain for sure, but at least he's
very, very crafty. He won't get caught.
But again, that was back in the 80s. So my parents are probably just like, yeah, all right, whatever. Now they'd probably be like, I'd have to get, counseling or something.
You would have to go to, and they would too, for sure. And my second pick, I got back to back here. This is really tough, but I hope you guys take some of the ones I'm not picking. I'm going to go with the boss Sims. His drunk acting, I thought
so good,
phenomenal. Let's
so
get
good.
Face like right when he closes the door, and from that moment on, he acted as if he had 15 drinks. From when he closed that door on, it was just a lot of. I'm not going to say the name, but I have a buddy who does a lot of this as well. A lot of touching and arm patting when they're drunk, and it's just like so horrible to be around. And he's just slurring his words on purpose. It's just great, over the top drunk acting.
I'm pretty convinced that he was just drunk.
He might have just been drunk. Right? It's not drunk acting. He's drunk on film.
Yes, I'm like 99% on that one.
And it's such a great work party where I don't think there's even any food. They just get the bottles. They just get the bottles out of scotch.
Yep. Yeah, when the guy starts off just being like, time to get shit faced.
And then he just opens bottles of scotch, and Billy was choosing milk over alcohol not long ago. And now his first drink, I think, was scotch and multiple glasses of it.
That's a great pick. That whole scene. I mean, that was obviously a turning point in the film, or at least a prelude to a turning point. I'm going to go with my second pick. This has one of the greatest movie posters of all time. I think movie posters probably have less influence now than they used to, but it's basically just a chimney with Santa's arm coming out, because Santa's mostly gone down in the fireplace, with just holding this shiny axe. And it's just an absolutely amazing visual, and it's not in the movie, but it's perfect for what this is.
I don't think he goes down a chimney in the movie, but we've talked about this before, how there's certain movies, the posters and what ends up being like the VHS box cover. I would avoid those aisles in the movie store, and this was one of those ones where it's like Santa's holding an axe coming out of or going into a chimney in that movie aisle, I'm not going down that aisle.
Yeah.
It was an oversized box too. It was one of those early '80s ones too that had like a really, really big.
It's great.
box.
It's great. You see that and you know exactly what this movie is going to be about. You know what you're getting into. It also has a great tagline on it. It says, "You've made it through Halloween. Now try and survive Christmas." It's just that also just wraps it up. It's
great.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, the movie did a great job of good and it got it good and bad because it got in trouble, whatever. But of advertising, but
right.
Yeah, the movie poster is perfect, and I think we're back to you.
Okay, my second pick is the progression, like of the actors that they used for Billy. Like I remember, I asked Bobby if that was Fred Savage, whatever, the Wonder Years kid. What's his name?
Savage, you got
Fred
it.
Savage, yeah. So I thought that he had that look, like that innocent
The original
looking
little
kid,
boy.
the original
Yeah.
little boy. And then it went into like a punk looking kid, like one of those like 70s punks that you'd expect to just like be the worst kind of kid. And then when he showed up at the toy store or whatever, when he's like, "Oh, this is only a job for a man or whatever," and then he's the boy. He looks like, I mean, it's probably a stretch to say he looks like a young Van Damme or something, but
Yeah.
he's like,
I think it's a young Van Damme.
He's like the beefiest guy we've seen like in any movie yet.
It was such a great reveal too.
And the pan up the body.
Yeah.
Right on the biceps.
And like it's the middle of winter and he's wearing like a cut off shirt.
And why would
Guns off.
And then it's like, oh wait, he's too good looking after he was just a freak. There's something under the surface. Obviously, and the premise of the movie. But yeah, so that was my favorite. It's just like the actor choice along each stage of Billy's life. I thought it was great.
Yeah, he definitely had a awkward phase for sure in the middle of the movie there.
Yeah.
I'm sure he got really badly bullied, as those awful bullies did, and then he got into shape.
Yep.
All right, so I guess I'm the last pick in the draft.
Last pick before we get into sleepers.
Great. So I don't know if I'm cannibalizing too much of the movie here, but I wanted to pick just Billy's character development. I feel like the story built so nicely from the scene with the grandfather to the actual traumatic event itself to the Catholic orphanage progression, and just watching it was so believable that this like poor boy had these like series of traumas that never were dealt with, or he never found a single person who supported him except for the one nun, but she was kind of, her hands were tied with really being able to help him. But just that progression I was blown away with. I feel like that made the movie with his like character development, and it sold the rest of the movie for me.
I mean, that's what makes the movie. You get this character that you feel for him, but then he's also this murderer, and you don't, as a watcher, don't know how to feel, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Totally. And I also feel like there's so many other slasher movies where like the Michael Myers, you get like 3 minutes of backstory, and then it's just slasher movie, and it's about the like other characters. But I felt like that's what is part of what made this movie so spectacular, was really feeling how he could turn into this kind of sociopathic murderer based on his history. And I really enjoyed being able to kind of see how that built along the way.
Yeah, it was 44 minutes until Billy became a killer. So for an 85-minute movie, that's half the movie there. I mean, that's a lot of development, which most movies don't go into when they're just plain slashers. And it's funny, some of the reviews I read were like, this movie took too long to become the slasher movie that I thought it was. And it's like, the development is what makes it so good, because even while he was killing people, I'm like, yeah, I see it. I'm on his side. I get it. Like, of course he's going to do this. He gets getting tossed into these horrible Christmas scenarios all the time.
Right. And I feel like it showed how, he could go from being the sweet, innocent boy to like progress into this murderer, versus again some of those other movies where it's just like this person was born into being a monster, and they were inherently this awful creature from birth. But to really be able to see that this was like an innocent kid and watch that progression, I was so glad that they used kind of their like you said, their allotted time to build that story.
Yeah, this answers the nature versus nurture question pretty definitively.
Totally.
And it's also interesting because it makes you think, like, who is the biggest villain in the movie? It may not be the person that murders everybody, right? Like Mother Superior might be the villain, right?
And she gets away with it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's crazy, right? That's crazy to have a film where you have someone brutally murder lots of people viciously, and yet he's not the villain. I mean, he is a villain, but almost, by circumstance.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great choice. And now we're into the sleeper round.
Sleep around.
All right, Bugs up again.
Okay, I feel like we touched on this. I'm just going to take the feeling when you work in retail or any sort of customer service business and the last customer leaves, you lock the door and it's party time. Like, I love that transition and it's instant, just like with the boss that you see. It's like, lock the door, let's get shit-faced. And I have lived in that world, and that moment is, there's nothing better than locking the door behind the last customer and saying goodnight and turning on the party.
That is such a great pick, because you're right. Working in retail or places where you have customers, I remember working at a gym, and those people would take forever to get out of the locker room. And once the last one does, it's that feeling of, maybe it's not always let's get shit-faced, but it's a lot of joy once that last person goes to the door and you get to lock it after them.
Yep, definitely.
That might be an underrated, like, top feeling in life. That
it could be.
It's really, when you've worked like for 12 straight hours with people that you don't really care for in your face, and then they are all gone and you're with the coworkers that you actually kind of like, it's a great feeling.
And now, because of that feeling, I never want to be the last person in any store.
Oh, definitely.
They're just looking at me saying, get out of here the entire time.
This is also probably a bad one compared to you guys, but the picking up a hitchhiker or even stopping to help anyone is a thing that I don't understand. I don't understand what kind of person ever does that, but I feel like that was so much more prevalent, like, back.
It might be the whitest thing you can do.
Oh my God. It's like his wife and his 2 kids in the car. They're not just driving like 20 minutes or something. They're like doing a trek back from like the dad's home or whatever, retirement home or whatever. And it's like, you would really pull over and be like, it's Santa. Like,
and how did you describe the dad?
Adult dad. Yeah. He's just like that dad that just like doesn't get anything. He's just like, adult dad that's just like, what, honey? And then the son is the smarter one. He's like, no, Dad, please don't stop. It's whatever. Like, Santa's gonna punish us or whatever.
Especially after the mom just said that awful thing about old people.
Yeah, exactly. Nonsense. So it's like the dad could have just not been thinking, but then the son Billy even says, like, no, Dad, don't stop. And then he's still like, sure, we'll help him. Like, it's just so like,
we'll teach our son not to stop for strangers. God,
I just don't get it.
Never.
All right, my sleeper, I'm going to take in the house where the babysitter and her boyfriend are fooling around on the pool table. There were a lot of great things in there. I'm going to take the absolutely amazing tiger paintings that are all throughout that house.
So
they
good.
Are unbelievable. I want to decorate my entire house just like that house was decorated, with those amazing tiger paintings.
I'm sure the Bug would be fine with that.
Yeah, I'll accept one.
Start with one.
They were pretty awesome, but
I had a good amount of like lion paintings and drawings in my house, and so maybe it was just people just like cats.
Yeah,
big wild cat paintings. I meant to pick this earlier, so I'm lucky that it's still here. But right after Billy got the job as the warehouse guy, they went into this like 80s montage of happiness.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
And it was like an intro to like Three's Company or something, where it's like, ha, 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 these quick little shots and like looks from the boss and good job, son. And he's like picking boxes, and it's all so merry.
Yeah, and that song, The Warm Side of the Door.
Warm Side of the Door, yeah. Always want to be on the warm side of the door. So good. Another song, which I can't believe wasn't picked, but the soundtrack of this movie is incredible too, including the main song,
Yep.
which I can't believe wasn't picked at all.
Yep.
I did have montage on my
That
draft
montage
list.
was amazing.
That was so good. It was just so, and it really, I feel like, I mean, it was perhaps a little over the top, like you said, Three's Company, a little bit on the cheese factor. But I also feel like it really portrayed like he had a chance of being normal again. Like he was on the right path. He had it within him. And then
there's two paths, right? There's naughty and nice, and he was on the nice montage.
Yep.
Yes, it was like very clear he was on that path.
Well, he could have stayed there if he wasn't working with a bunch of idiots.
And who make him dress up as Santa.
Yeah, who made him dress up as Santa, who just like...
But they didn't know, right?
Except for the fact that he went into like catatonic shock while they explained it to him.
You never
like,
think that.
Silent, sweating, like discomfort, or not to be like, hey, you seem uncomfortable with this.
I don't know. I feel like it's like you're the new hire. Like you always get stuck with the grunt work like that. Like no one else. It's always like, yep, new guy. Time to put on that Santa suit.
Yeah, because the other guys are smart enough to know when they go around asking, and you're just not even there.
Right.
All right, that was awesome. Thanks again for coming on the pod.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here. This was an all-time movie for me. So this was
thank
great.
you for the movie suggestion. I don't think I wouldn't have seen this if it wasn't for that.
I never would have considered that this could have been eligible because it's a perfect movie.
Me neither. And I hope by the next time we record, I get to hear how fun the board game was.
Yes, for sure.
Oh yeah, I'll have to get into that.
Well, that was great. Great draft.
Awesome draft. It was so great having them on. And once again, thanks to your wife for recommending this movie. I was too afraid to watch it for years, so I'm glad You want to get to our superlative?
Yes. And
you came up with this one.
This one is, when you watch it, there are just so many good ones of these. But favorite Mother Superior quotation.
I got to like 10 that I had written down, and then I was like, wait a second, I don't need this many in my notes. But there's just so many. Every line she drops is a gem.
She's one of the greatest villains in horror movies of all time, I think. Like I feel like she should get more credit when people are talking about great horror villains. I feel like Mother Superior should be in those lists.
I think she should supplant Nurse Ratched. Like I think she's even worse than Nurse Ratched.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Superior. That's the reference. All right, do you want to go first?
Sure. And it was there. As you said, there were so many to choose from, and I kept going back and forth.
Let's name some honorable mentions afterwards.
Sure.
To make sure
I think we have to.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, and this was a really, really a tough one. I was debating between two, but I think my favorite one, and this comes up very early in the movie, is just, you will learn what it means to be sorry.
Oh, so good.
It's just so vicious. It's such a vicious thing to say to a child, and she really means it.
Really
and it's just like, it's also, it's so pervasive and shows what her like mentality is of, I'm going to make you feel the way I think you should be feeling right now. And that's, I mean, that theme carries throughout her whole aura. But so I thought that was just a great quotation because it summed her up, and it was just also like to the bone.
To the bone for sure. And it's like, I don't know if we have to add on an occasional category of like, is this too real of a depiction by an actor that it isn't them? Like, this feels so true. She does such a good job in this role where it's like, I feel like she's like this off camera. I'm terrified of her.
She 100% is. There's zero chance this was just acting. I believe this was a horrible woman.
Yeah, she's not out there having martinis and having one night stands after this. She is this person. To go along with that, it's a short one, but after you took that one, I got to go with punishment is good.
Yes, those are the two. Those are the top two that I was debating between.
It's like Wall Street, right? Like greed is good, and it goes into this whole thing, and her view is punishment is good.
Mm-hmm.
Just terrifying.
It's terrifying, and then the whole film is just it takes that and runs with it, right? It gets ingrained in his head of this idea of punishment is good, and he then needs to go doling it out, and it all comes back to her ultimately.
I see nothing but greed where there should be gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this anger with kids opening. They have one nice day of the year where they're not feeling awful, and she just hates it.
She's so obsessed with this idea of bringing back the sort of righteous view of Christmas, but she just does it to such a degree that just is so ruinous of the very thing she's sort of trying to cultivate. It's perplexing. I also liked her line, "You will see how well my methods work." And it's like you say that, and then it's sort of like we spend the rest of the movie seeing how well her methods work.
I think this movie was more about Mother Superior's hubris than it was about Billy. Like
100%.
She tried all these times, and she's even saying like, "Just you wait." After he was tied to the bed, because that jerk other like nun came in and let him go outside and whatever else. But after all that, she's like, "Just watch. I'm going to put him on Santa's lap soon, and he's going to be a good boy." What are you doing?
It's
His
insane.
family was killed by Santa 3 years ago. Why would you think this is a good idea?
It's insane. I mean,
but it's about her showing off and peacocking about her methods.
Yep, exactly. And then and that's the whole film. I mean, the whole film is we just see what this mindset creates.
And it's funny. Like a lot of the cultness of this movie and why it's kind of held strong is this is kind of like a funny example as to what happens when you don't recognize someone's trauma. It just gets bigger and bigger, and it just blows up because everyone was just like didn't really care about the awful thing that happened. And when he was a kid, and they just brushed over it. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you. All right, one change be a blockbuster. I'll go first because mine is very simple. I'd love to see what would happen if it just stayed in theaters. They just kept pushing it like they were before when it was, they're doing the commercial between Little House on the Prairie, and they just keep going at it, not afraid of it. And they just $2.5 million in like the first week or two. It's beating out
6 days. $2.5 million in 6 days.
It stays like, let's see if it has its actual run. What would happen? It would probably be it wouldn't be on our podcast. I bet.
No chance.
It wouldn't be. It would be much more of a big. It already was. Like it spawned 5 sequels or
and they're rebooting the movie. It's in the works for now. Mine's basically the exact same line. So I was sort of thinking, I was like, well, was this movie just ahead of its time? And that was the issue, right? If it was released now for the first time, would that be it? That it would be a huge blockbuster. And I was like, well, that's not quite it, because this movie. There's been so many more movies since then that were inspired by this film. So it's almost like I want to take today's, morality, shift it back to 1984. You think of like the marketing these days, Terrifier 2. Part of the marketing is to make people as upset and angry as possible because that drives eyeballs. You people picketing your film, the box office is through the roof in this day and age. So I think
it's like if you have an album and there's white moms all over the place picketing your album for this language, you're like, yes, absolutely, that's exactly what I want. Go on CNN and talk about how awful I am.
Yep. So that's my pick. I think I still want it to be out in 1984 because I want it to be in that era of movies and like that progression of films. But I want sort of today's cultural mindset at that point, and boom, because. Like we've discussed, we have no edits to be made to the film itself. In my mind, this is a perfect movie for what this is. It's perfect.
Yeah, I love that idea of taking the current society and putting us in 1984 when this first comes out. For sure, because you're right. Like, it's so funny to even read that people were appalled. Like, we're already laughing at people's like quotes about like, I can't believe this came on between my commercials of my free TV show, and people were like, it ruined my Christmas. And yeah, I just saw the Terrifiers. And it's just like this is nothing compared to like what we're used to now.
Yep.
Do you have any spin-off ideas?
So, I mean, the obvious spin-off is you kind of just rerun this with the younger brother. I mean, they set you up for that at the ending scene. And that, in fact, is Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 starts from that premise. So well-trod path there. But I really want to see the Mother Superior prequel. I just want to see what what trauma did she go through to make her like this? Give me that movie, and I'm sure it's phenomenal.
I'll bet it's terrifying to get her to where she is now. Yeah, I bet it. Like she was probably, in the what would it be, maybe in the 30s, going out and wearing a skirt that was a little bit below her knees, and then had some huge reaction that someone punished her about that, and all these little things that that we would think would be nothing. I'm sure she was punished for back in the day, but that would be terrifying to see how she got to where she is now.
It would be great, and it's kind of an era that you don't have a lot of horror movies taking place in. So I feel like there could be a lot of fun things that you could do to take advantage of that.
Oh, that's true. I think you and I are pretty similar on this one too. The obvious one is the brother, in which they did. I want the prequel to the story of the Santa that held up the liquor store for $31 and killed his parents.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there? Maybe he has some similar Billy S type things, and he just lost his stuff because he was confronted with Christmas and had to play Santa Claus just like Billy.
Yeah. I could see that being sort of like a spawning an anthology series where you have these different types of stories going through, and they all overlap in the littlest bit like that. That had nothing. I mean, it obviously set the stage for Billy's parents getting murdered, but you didn't really need that per se, but that would be a great little hook to just get you into another entire storyline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Any stuff we haven't touched on from our notes? I have that first Santa had amazing aim to shoot
his third shot right between the guy's like eyes is amazing.
Yeah. And in the car, he shot the parents. Like the car was peeling away, and he nailed them.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to know, did the toy companies pay for product placement?
Oh,
there's a lot of sort of Hasbro or little.
I was looking up. There was a game called Krull. I looked that up. There's like a number of games in that store that I wonder.
Because normally you'd be like, you got to pay for that, but then you're like, do you put your toy company? Do you want your toys in a movie like this? I don't know.
Is this good or bad advertising?
I'm not sure.
Coke was wondering as well. Yeah, that's a good one.
We didn't talk about the antlers, the woman getting impaled on the deer antlers. I mean, I think that's one of the iconic shots of this film.
Yeah, that was also great. That was my let's see. When she was alive, she yelled up to the kid that she was babysitting, "If you don't go back to bed, Santa won't come." And then the guy says he's not the only one. Pretty good. And then 2 ball in the corner pocket. That guy was awful, but great for the 80s. And who does it on a? Why would you choose a pool table? You can't even put like a drink down on a pool table. That's such disrespect.
Yeah, I mean, my only thought was maybe it'd be nice to be on a perfectly level surface. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, they must be pros at like 17 because I wasn't perfectly designing things for perfectly level surfaces at that point. But maybe you're right. The felt top might be a good thing. What was the jerk in the Randall at the toy store?
Mm-hmm. What a dick!
What a dick!
Yeah,
and he was. I meant to bring this up in like a number of other categories, but he was giving his penis as a present.
Yes,
and
yes,
that
he
was what it was. And then he tried to rape her, and she was. I thought initially she would be like happy that like, hey, Billy came in and killed this guy who was raping me, and she was like mad at him.
Yeah, I think it's probably because he killed him. I think if he had just like tied him up or beat him up a little bit, we'd be talking about a different thing. But
not the one arm holding up him,
exactly,
with his Michael Myers strength.
The other thing I found a little bit odd about the toy store, it wasn't, aside from the door that said employees only, it was very hard to tell where the toy store ended and the stock room began. It was a toy store that almost looked like a stock room.
It was only a stock room with a couple areas that was the toy store. Very sad outside too. Awful signage out
front. Yes, painting over the windows was a strange choice.
Very, very strange. Let's see. I don't know if you ever got in trouble in school and you had to stay in from recess.
Mm-hmm.
and you like look out the window and see kids playing, and like they're playing the game that you always play.
Yeah, ruefully looking out the window, like one tear goes down your eye.
Yeah, when Billy's doing that, it's just like that's the worst feeling. Everyone's gonna come in and all reference like what they played at Success or whatever, and you're not gonna be a part of any of it. I also love when Billy said, it's naughty to say bad things about. He got really mad at his mom. It's naughty to say bad things about old people. Santa Claus is going to punish you, and then like right afterwards, Santa Claus shows up.
Yep. He knew what was up, just like the grandfather. The grandfather also knew what was up.
We didn't talk about the grandfather at all, but like they made it seem like he was crazy, which maybe he was, or he just knew this was coming. I
was curious about what that meant, and I'm sure there's all different interpretations. I also think maybe they put it in a little bit to sow the seeds of like mental illness, running families. I don't know. It's probably part of it.
But if my life goes in another direction, I'm definitely telling people I can't speak, and then no one will try and talk to me, and I get to just sit in the chair quietly for the rest of it. That doesn't sound that bad.
No, that seemed fine.
I think that's. Last thing, which was very like TV show-esque, was when it was the mullet-haired Billy version, and he had just punched Santa in the face and then ran up to his room and was saying like, please don't punish me, and did that like freeze frame on his face for a couple seconds longer than you expected. I thought that was awesome.
And were you able to get an HD version?
No,
because I had to watch this in SD, and it was the
second one we've done SD, but some scenes were way better SD than others.
Yeah. Some it was like suddenly at that right around where the party scene happened in the store, all of a sudden it was like dark, and not because it was dark. It was just like the master was terrible. Yep.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Which was kind of fun. You were kind of curious about what the next scene would be. Will I be able to see what's going on?
I think a remaster of this reissue, it's due.
Yeah, they didn't go too far with like the special effects, so I bet it would hold up.
I bet it would.
I guess last thing, I also liked when some kid said, "Your brother's a nutcase. That's what's wrong." Which I guess leads into the second one, right? Because the younger
guy, I mean, kids know what's up.
They do. All right, that was awesome. It was great. These are great couple of Christmas movies that we did. It's funny, we're turning into like a horror podcast, which is fine. I mean, we love it. But I don't think our next ones will be horror because this actor that we're basing around doesn't do a ton of horror, but it might be. There's some in there depending on what we pick. We were talking about for our next 2 episodes picking a movie from Keanu Reeves because he somehow has not made it to our podcast, and I think he's both of our favorite actors.
Oh yeah, I mean he's amazing. I mean, I guess he has so many films that are so well regarded, so that maybe that's why he hasn't made it on before. But there also are a number of great movies that do fit. So I'm psyched about this. I'm very curious to hear what your selection is.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
I have 3 movies. So if you were going to go first, I know you're going to pick one of them. So I'd have 2 to choose from, but I feel like I'm making the wrong. We can always go back, right? So maybe we'll make a big deal. But I think I'm taking Knock Knock.
Nice. I've never seen it.
Oh, great. So I guess we're kind of going back in. I mean, maybe it's just me. We're just going back into sort of a horror movie world. But yeah, Knock Knock is my choice.
Nice. Solid. My choice. And you might find this comical, but I've been sort of just circling around this film for a few years, and every time I see it, I like it a little bit more. I'm going Johnny Mnemonic.
All right, good. All right. I was going to be so upset if that wasn't picked. Which one do you want to do next?
I don't know. I feel like we should like flip a coin or something.
All right, let's flip you flip a coin.
I don't have a coin.
I don't have a coin either. All right, I have one of my son's teething crackers. And I'm putting a thumb imprint into one side. All right. That's your side.
All right. Because like a thumb drive, Johnny Mnemonic.
Exactly. I'm going to flip it. I'm not going to do the catch thing. I'm just going to
just where it lands.
It is not the thumb drive. It is my side. So
Knock knock.
we're doing knock knock next.
All right. Fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. You haven't seen it, huh?
I haven't. Great. Well, that was, as always, awesome. I can't wait to dig into next week's movie. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a great time, and I'm glad we had the wives on, as always, and I can't wait till knock knock.
Yeah. All right. Later.
Later.